Hello, welcome back to Health Score. Today we're back in the category of rest and activity, and we're finishing up this section with a discussion about sitting. And specifically, the recommendation is to sit for less than 30 minutes at a time when you do sit. So we talked about the total duration of sitting, goal being less than 8 hours, but it's also important that in those less than 8 hours of sitting, you break up each bout of sitting so that you're not sitting for longer than 30 minutes at a time when you do sit. There's good evidence for this, and basically the population was divided into four groups based on how often when they sat for longer than 30 minutes. The group that always sat for longer than 30 minutes, we'll define them as greater than or equal to 63% of the time, had a much higher mortality than the group that seldom sat for longer than 30 minutes when they did sit, defined as less than 42% of the time. What's the mechanism for how prolonged bouts of sitting can affect health? Several ways. One is increasing triglycerides and decreasing HDL cholesterol, which is the good cholesterol. These two factors will increase risk for heart disease. And finally, increases in insulin resistance occur with prolonged sitting, and this leads to increased risk of obesity and diabetes. So the recommendation we have is to limit the time you sit to not more than 30 minutes at a time. A lot of people will think, I'll just use my Apple Watch and it will remind me to stand. The problem is the Apple Watch goes off every hour. 50 minutes into an hour, it will tell you to stand. That means you've been sitting for 50 minutes, and that's too long. So the Apple Watch, and I couldn't figure out a way of changing the Apple Watch settings to shorten the notification time. So the Apple Watch is not ideal. Then some people will say, okay, I'll use an alarm clock. Well, the point is that we're talking about establishing a lifelong habit. Do you think that for the rest of your life, you're going to want an alarm to go off every 30 minutes and that you're actually going to want to keep getting up for it? Probably you'll turn off the alarm clock. So the point I'm trying to make is that once again, it is easier to stand, to have that be your default, and not get up and down like a jack-in-the-box every 30 minutes, going off, standing when you hear something ringing or a notification. It's probably not a habit that's going to last. This is what I do. So I don't have episodes where I'm sitting for longer than 30 minutes, or those are episodes that are rare. And when they do occur, I'm aware of the fact that I'm sitting. So for instance, if I'm on a flight, that's a time when I'm going to be sitting for more than 30 minutes. That's when I have to make a conscious effort to get up and walk or go to the restroom at 30-minute intervals. But for the rest of my day, I'm not thinking about every 30 minutes standing up because I'm already standing. That's my recommendation. There are other strategies that you can apply, like if you're on the road a lot, taking breaks. It's a little bit inconvenient, but as best you can do, you want to limit any time you're sitting to not more than 30 minutes. So I've talked about now two recommendations for sitting. The prior one was not to exceed 8 hours. This one is to limit any episode of sitting to not more than 30 minutes. We talked about the health benefits of avoiding prolonged sitting. We talked about how it's easier to make standing your default rather than being reminded to stand every 30 minutes. I hope you're able to apply these strategies to your day and sustain this lifelong habit, which will promote your optimal health. Thank you very much.